Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of the journey. Um, the last few weeks, we have had a series of guests that have come on and um, essentially share not only their story of the journey that they are on called life, but equally important, they share their life's work on their journey. Um, Combination of the last couple of guests that stand out to me, of Greg Young with his work with critical incident stress management and working with first responders as well as others, and Dr. Terrence Lichtenwald as a forensic psychologist and school psychologist and clinical psychologist, and the work that he has been most passionate about throughout his life. When he was actively working, as well as both of them in their retirement, and as they continue contributing to our lives and the greater society. Today, I want to focus on, in this particular reflection, uh, the idea that in our lifetime, in our time period, at least for me, I have never been in a time period where there was so much pretty easy access to information. Um, I, probably like many people, we may be family gathered around and someone may ask something, or Diane and I are watching some series or show and a question pops up that neither one of us may have the answer to, and I or Diane can immediately go to our phone, Google what the question is, and we can get an answer. Sometimes it may be the actual age of an actor, or maybe it could be what was the inspiration behind a particular movie or series that we're watching. And when we ask a very specific question to uh, Google or whatever it may be, we may be able to get an answer to that very specific question, such as a couple of weeks ago, Sierra was with us because her fiance was out of town and she wasn't feeling well, and so we ended up going and rewatching for the first time for her, and Diane and I rewatching John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, and the sequel to that, Staying Alive, and then later followed up with Urban Cowboy. And the question came up, how old is John Travolta? Very specific question, and we could search that and find that answer. Other questions may not necessarily be as specific, and so a lot of different information may come up. I guess my point being is that at this time period, maybe more so than any other time period in our society, it's not a lack of access to information or a lack of information. It's how do we discern what information um, what information is our truth, or will give us the truth. And I think this is probably one of those harder questions to answer. What is truth? Because based upon someone or some institution's perception or motivation or benefit, they may very well give information based upon that side of the equation. So what can we do in the midst of so much information? And not that there's a lack of that information, but it's really, how do we decipher, how do we discern what information actually fits and will help continue us to grow and develop. I think for me, it goes back to me being able to be grounded and being present right now. you've heard me talk many times about, the dwelling on and getting fixated on about something that's happened, has already happened, regardless if I perceive that it was good or bad, and being stuck in something that was before right now, or getting stuck thinking about something that may happen in the future, regardless if that's something to look forward to or something to fear and be concerned about that may or may not happen in the future. That in both cases, that really maybe the only thing I have is just being right here and right now. It was interesting. I had a situation that came up, and it was a reminder for me, of this possible lesson of not being present. Uh, Diane and I were driving back with Diane's sister Delinda and her husband Rob, and we were driving back from spend some time with our friends, just having pizza and conversation. And it was fairly early in the evening, and so, but it was dark because it was in April, and we had just turned off the the highway onto an off ramp, and then we're going to turn onto a main street, and we were going to turn left to that main street. And in my mind, I was already thinking about, to get to their house to drop them off, that two lights after I turn left, that I'm going to have to turn right. And already thinking about dropping them off, and then thinking about, because it was early, that I would still have time to, to do a couple things around the house, and if nothing else, just maybe watch a show and at the house, and just kind of just relax. As I was turning left after the light turned green, I was already merging into the right-hand lane. And as I did that, Diana Robb, as I saw in my side mirror, said, "Ooh, watch out." And what then I saw in my rear view mirror were lights, that obviously the car that was to my right, that I had not been aware of, was a police officer. So now, pulling over to the side of the road, this was what was most present. It had been, let's see, it had been maybe 33, maybe 34 years ago was the last time that I had been pulled over. Though, being aware that this could happen, even though it hadn't happened for 34 years, I had my insurance card and registration and my driver's license ready, available. As the police officer came up to the window, I knew what mistake I had made, and he very much wanted to, not after looking at my insurance and registration, wanted to take my driver's license back to see if I had any priors. As I'm sitting there, there's adrenaline going through my system. Not only was I embarrassed because of what I had done, but obviously the possibility of getting a ticket for this as well. Long story short, what ended up happening is that the police officer gave me a warning and didn't give me a ticket for improper lane usage. After dropping Rob and Delinda off and going home, and then, doing a couple things, in my mind, I had, even though I had been on this intersection, this off ramp turning onto this road numerous times, and turned left numerous times, I was questioning if there was a double lane turning to turn left. I wondered to myself, why had I not even seen the car next to me when we were at the stoplight, let alone that it was a police officer? that as I was turning, that it easily could have been a bigger problem. It could have been an accident. The fact that it was a police officer made an incident that happened just a few weeks earlier, that I had done the same thing at a different intersection with Diane in the car, and she pointed out, were you not seeing that? Now, as I mentioned, I have not been pulled over or had a ticket in 34 years. Now, that streak, though I had a warning, was still is still current. But what is the bigger story for me? For me, outside of the embarrassment, outside of of being inconvenienced because of my mistake, what was the bigger lesson for me to look at? And I think for me, the bigger lesson, at least so far, is that that has been a tendency, even though I know better regarding about just being in the moment. At that particular time period, I had already been thinking about, as I was turning left, already thinking about two stoplights away about turning right. For me, I think that is what happens many times in my life, is that I'm thinking that I'm preparing ahead while I'm not being present, and then setting myself up for possibly some type of situation. This by far was, just as the police officer had written it, was a warning. Will I heed that warning? For me, not always, but at least in this time, that I'm internalizing that as an opportunity to learn, to increase my awareness, to be more present, not just specifically when I'm driving, but then also in other areas of my life. Because symbolically, I think that's where it happened to be, but I think it's much more as reflective in other areas of my life. That this warning was really an opportunity to learn, maybe even a greater lesson. Would I have learned it even more if I would have gotten a ticket? Maybe, maybe not. For me, I know that it wasn't the police officer's fault or anybody else's. It was definitely me not being present and not following what I know as being very much a guiding rule of the road. More importantly, the fact that I wasn't cognizant of the car next to me, and I was already 50 yards ahead of where I need to be. I think sometimes with all the information that we have coming at us and wanting to not have bad things happen, with the little things that I can control by just being aware and just being in the present, I think maybe I can practice by just starting to do that. Just be where I'm at right now. Does that mean that I'm not going to prepare for something? You know, if I'm doing a talk, I'm going to need to prepare for that on a Saturday. If I'm doing a talk on a Wednesday, absolutely need to take the time right now to prepare for something that I'm going to have to do in a few days. But then I need to just be preparing at that time, not trying to do two or three things at the same time. Also, when things happen, how can those things be the warning? How can it be a lesson in which to learn and then make choices afterwards to navigate, to make different or maybe more life-giving decisions? As always, I appreciate you being here. If there's something that came up for you as I was sharing this, thoughts or reflecting on just incidences that happened in my life, please, I would encourage you to share those, because you never know who may need to hear them. Look forward to being with you next week.